Well, that's going to be the focus of our discussion this morning, Constitution Review and what it entails and whether or not, from the signs that we see, will this process give us the Constitution that all are in dire need of, or say that we truly need. Well, we have this morning Mr. Chukwuma Machukwume, who's a senior advocate of Nigeria and former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice of Imo State in our Abuja studios. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm sure you must have been watching activities across the country and monitoring the different thought patterns of leaders and those who are submitting memoranda to this Constitution Review hearing. What are your thoughts? Do you think that we will be able to coalesce around, common values at the end of the day with this review process?
Yes, the most important thing is the political will, the listening ear, the ability to understand what are the yearnings of the people. If it is for ritual purposes, just for the sake of it, then we will remain where we are. But if bold steps are taken, and those pressing issues that are affecting the Nigerian polity are put into value, are put into oppression, are put into the amendment process, then there will be hope. A situation where there will be no go area in their mind, and the issue of what and what are not to talk about, then there will be a problem. You see, the issue of amendment must be to improve the polity and nationhood of Nigerian nation.
I find it remarkable that you already said it. This is about ritual. And I think that word is very important.
Yes.
Because what it signifies is that this is not the first time we're doing this.
Excellent.
As a matter of fact, every assembly undertakes an attempt at the amendment of the Constitution. And I say an attempt because oftentimes it doesn't always turn out successfully. On the part of the National Assembly, it might sail through. But sometimes when it gets to the executive quarters, it might just be ignored. So in terms of it not being a ritual, what are the chances that this time around we will be able to produce something that will be agreeable to at least majority of Nigerians?
First and foremost, what are these issues that are burning now? Through federalism. The state police. First of all, let me take a issue of the
true federalism.
True federalism.
So, some people have said there's no such thing.
No. There is. In the United States of America, where we borrowed the presidential system.
Is that true federalism?
That's true federalism. That's why you saw a president of a country asking a secretary of a state, of ordinary state, to find me some votes. Because the power resided in the states. True federalism is a situation that brings the best of unity for Nigeria, where the component states are feeling themselves as worthy members of the federation. But a situation where we call ourselves a federation and yet be practicing pseudo-federalism and unitary system, where only the center calls the shots, then there's a problem. I want to recall to you, in 1966, what happened. The Decree 34 of 1966, passed by Ironsi, was the cause of its being overthrown. That was the intelligentsia. The intellectuals in the North describe it. I'll give you the book called Gowan by Professor Eliago, where in page 32 to 33, in chapter 6, he said the changing of the federal system into unitary by Agui University is the root cause of its overthrow. The question now is, if the federal system that was there in 1963, that was changed by Agui University led is overthrow, why would we in 2021 be afraid to practice that which we we were protected in 1966. Why? Why would unitary system, in the name of pseudo-federalism, now be what we'll be practicing today? It is this going back to the archaic way of doing it that is causing the tension today. The federating units are feeling they are being emasculated, and they are now being robots. And some people are now taking advantage of so-called federalism to occupy and then make nonsense of their lives. And that is why there can be no development. That is why there can be no progress. That is why we exchange initiative for development to initiative for fear. Today it is fear, fear, fear. So, the constitutional amendment, for it to meet what it sought, was to go to what happened in 1963. When from the 3 regional structure, we moved to the 4 regional structure, the Midwestern states. Also, what happened in 1967 by the military when they divided the states, the federation, into 12 states, that created a lot of leeway where the people, now the minorities that were afraid of the majorities, they were carved out. And each person was feeling that it is worth it to belong to the nation.
So the divisions brought about togetherness?
The division brought about togetherness because the minorities that were afraid of the majority tribes were able to take away, and they were able to. Today, that fear is no longer there. Now, if you want
what fear is no longer there? Because let's bring this back now. We know that this is not the first time that we have undertaken a constitution review, and there have been attempts before now to have other meetings, other conferences outside of the Constitution. I mean, outside of the Constitution amendment, Constitution conferences, national conferences, so to speak, which people were hoping would produce, and maybe the outcomes of that will produce new constitutions. Heavily, one of the chief things they always ask for in these national conferences are the creation of new states. So the fact that states have been created since 1967 or so, up until now, I mean, up until we now have 36 states, have still not calmed or quelled the agitation for more states. And some people think that that's as a result of how the Constitution is currently being implemented. The fact that, you know, the states, you know, all come to the Federal Capital Territory for a sharing, rather than the states producing to give to the common purse. They think that if we went back, if we had a way for states to be more productive in such a way that they only remitted taxes, people will see a greater need to come together rather than increasing bureaucracies, which would only, you know, aggravate where we currently are as a people.
I totally agree with you. There's a phenomena. The old order changed, yielding place to new. Yes, the states were created that period. Today, is that the best? No. There's a new thought coming up. It came up in 2005, the Abacha, 1995 Abacha conference, where His Excellency Dr. Alex Ekweme brought up the issue of the zones. You see, this issue of zone came up first in 1974, when Mbadiwe, K.O. Mbadiwe, in a lecture to the Economic Society of University of Nigeria, Nsukka, made a proposal for 5 zones, and that the presidency should be rotated around that. Now in 1995, Dr. Alex Ekweme made a proposal for 8 zones. It tuned down to 6. What should be going on now are these 6 zones should now be the bedrock of the federation. The states, because the states have been so tinily done, And they are not encouraged to go into productive activity. They are now just encouraged to come to Abuja, as you rightly said, come to Abuja every month and pick some money. This time around, it is no longer picking some money, but picking loans. Picking loans. Because the federation we are running is not the one that encourages everybody to go home and work. So, the new constitution amendment must move towards a situation where these states that are in these zones will come together. We still be their states, but the zones becomes the operating point where these zones can have the power to organize themselves, because these zones are so done that they are homogeneous, at least in terms of thinking, in terms of cultural look, in terms of attitude. So, and then the power now resides around that column and not in the federation the way we have, where we now have a suffocating exclusive list. The zones now need to form the bedrock of the federating unit. The states inside them still remaining the way they are. We need to advance it gradually. So, why the 1967 creation of the states did its own wonders, today, the new phenomena is these states must remain as states, but in their zones becomes the federating bodies to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the powers of the federal government must be watered down. The power there will be devolution of power. Not just because, look at what happened in 1960 to 1963 or 1960 to 1967. The regions managed themselves. And in the Western Nigeria, you were able to see the free education everywhere. And the state moved fast. The Eastern region, the palm oil, not even oil, the ordinary palm oil, the state moved fast. In the north, because they were allowed to be themselves. The state moved with granite oil, granite, the pyramid, the granite pyramid. Why are we living these? Why are we living these that have brought a better development, that have enabled the North, without loan, to build one of the best universities in Africa? Why are we living that phenomena? Where are we living it to a situation you just sit and be talking of oil, and then how you can just take oil, and then, and that's all. Well, so, the amendment, in order to meet the need, this amendment is the center of unity of Nigeria. I mean, because that must be continuously amended in order to improve. The polity, we have seen it all now.
How big do you think the issue of fiscal federalism is? How much at the center of this is fiscal federalism in relation to all the other issues? Because for a number of people, they say, yes, before now, the issue was fiscal federalism. The fact that they wanted all the states to be more productive, own their resources and, remit something to the center. But today, it looks like the issue of security is now at the front burner. It's a bigger issue than even fiscal federalism. But do you think that they are related, and do you think that one has caused the other?
Exactly. What happened, the urge of the center? The urge of the center is amassing and intimidating the federating states. So, and this issue of, which I have earlier analyzed, of sitting to expect funds from the oil and not doing anything other than that, is leading to a situation where the security issue I think right now is being used as something else. It looks like it's no longer just occurring on its own. It looks like it's now being in a way where the state looks the other way, contrary to what the Constitution provides in Section 11, in Section 14, 1 and 2, which said that security and of the people are the most important aspect of government. Now, what are we saying? What we're saying is that Nigerians are now being caught like grasses. This is because the Constitution is not being obeyed. We just use the Constitution.
The current Constitution is not being obeyed.
Very well. Yes.
So if the
current Constitution
Constitution is not even being obeyed, and there are a number of lawyers who say, look, our problem is not the Constitution. Our problem is the fact that we haven't even obeyed what is inside this Constitution.
No.
How much more when we now have a new Constitution?
No. The two things are different.
Okay.
One, whatever you have, no matter how bad or not proper or not comprehensive it is it being obeyed? That's one. Not that it cannot be improved upon. The amendment is to improve it. There's Section 12, there's Section 9 that calls for amendment is for improvement. But as it is now, is it the one that is not even very comprehensive? Is it being obeyed? I cite you. Section 14, subsection 3 of the Constitution is talking about federal character. Federal character is the needle, is the nucleus of unity of Nigeria. Because if you look at the section, it tells you federal character for the unity of Nigeria. Federal character for the loyalty of Nigerians.
Indeed. So I was going to take you back.
So
yes.
Again, federal character comes up again in Section 217 of the Constitution that says appointment of the security apparatus of Nigeria must be loyal to the federal character. Appointment of the security apparatus. The Constitution is not done today. The Constitution happened there before the current regime came in. So that section was not inserted against this present administration. It happened there, which said it must be any appointment in the security apparatus must to reflect the federal character. Is it being obeyed? If it's not being obeyed, it means that even the small bad one we have in our hand is not being obeyed. And so, it does not mean that we cannot also improve on it. We must continue to go towards improving, and then all these lapses being blocked.
Well, just before I send this to Lagos now, I want to quickly avert your mind to the fact that we had a number of meetings, even before this public hearing on constitution amendment. Excuse me, the security situation in the country got so bad that we saw a number of governors meeting not just in their regions, but also meeting as a whole. I mean, without prejudice to the Nigerian Governors Forum, we saw meetings of northern governors, we've seen meetings of southern governors. The meeting of southern governors caused quite a ripple because they mentioned some of these issues which you brought to the fore, this issue of federal character. And at the heart of it, one of the very first things that they talked about is that open grazing be banned, and they mentioned a number of other things. For instance, they recommended that federal government should support willing states to develop alternative and modern livestock management systems. They agreed that the progress of the nation requires that urgent and bold steps be taken to restructure the Nigerian Federation, leading to the evolution of state police. And they also wanted a review of the revenue allocation formula. So you have a number of these agitations happening simultaneously with the Constitution Amendment. You also had a meeting yesterday, conference convoked by the House of Representatives on national security. So we have all of these things coming up with the communiques alongside an expectation we have from the Constitution. Now, if we're able to implement some of the recommendations being thrown up by these conferences, do you really think that a lot of Nigerians will care whether or not we have a new constitution or not?
I think they will care because actually the open grazing phenomena is not the only issue, as that now it is the most suffocating one, I agree. But also, the restructuring is not, yes. Also, the issue of federal character and all the rest of them. These are burning issues. We are having a lot of conferences and all that, but the next question is, how about implementation? How about implementation?
That's why I asked.
The citizens governors of the southern states, their bold initiative is to save the polity of the Nigerian nation. Because a situation where problems are coming up, we sit on it as if it doesn't matter. It will not do this polity any good. Life is dynamic. The constitution should be dynamic. It must accommodate new idiosyncrasies coming up. In the United States of America, how many constitutional amendments have they gone through? More than what we have gone through now. And theirs is that each of the issues coming up are trashed, straight to the point. Ours, the first alteration we have made to the Constitution of 1999 was just cosmetic. The second one was also cosmetic. The third one actually said, if you have been in government, if you are sworn in, and then you are removed and you come back, and you continue with that tenure, all day well and good. But then, has it scratched the core problem facing us? The core problem facing us is ensuring that federalism as it is practiced in Nigeria. Federalism that will encourage everyone to go and work, not to sit and try to use hegemony against order. Why would you not be contented in your state and be happy there? Why? What kind of federalism that?
Something that really stands out for me is the fact that you keep talking about implementation. The fact that, what we have right now, we haven't implemented. You have also made reference to the fact that, yes, we have all of these conferences and, plenty of talk, but the question is, what action will be taken? In your opinion, because, after the governor sat and came up with their 10-point communique, there was also some response from the presidency to the agitations of the governors, to the effect that they should not run away from the hard issues. And for some people, they believe that the governors also have sufficient powers in their hands to do what needs to be done in such a way that they might not exactly need to come to the federal government. What are your thoughts on that? There have been quite some controversial comments as well, but a number of people have said the governors themselves have not exactly practiced the autonomy which they desire from the federal government.
I totally agree with you. If you look at Section 11, subsection 1, it talks about the National Assembly passing some laws for the public security. Subsection 2 of it said, notwithstanding, the State Assembly are not precluded.
Sir, I'm going to I'll let you finish the point when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Kuma Machuku Umei, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Imo State, is still with us here in our Abuja studios. And just before we went on break, you were answering the question as to what the governors have done with the powers that they currently have.
I think some of the governors are actually utilizing, or some to say somehow, utilizing the powers that they should have. Section 11. Subsection 2.
When you say some of the governors, in what area? I mean, when you look at the fact that, look at what happened in Lagos, the protest that greeted some of the open hearing on the Constitution Amendment by protest. I mean, not that they blocked the place or anything, but let their grievances known. And a lot of them bordered very strongly on autonomy, local government autonomy. And as you're aware, Judicial is still very much on strike, asking for judiciary autonomy.
Yes. All this, there are a lot, the problems are multifarious. So they must come in stream and they will be solved one way or the other. But I want to point out to you the wonderful thing that had just happened in Lagos State. The House of Assembly passing the Crime Commission, where what is happening in the federal can be replicated in the state. That's good. That's proper. We cannot continue to emasculate everything to the center. The state has the right to prosecute crime. The state crime, all the state laws, if any person offends it, the state will prosecute. If you steal money in the state, you can also be tried there. The idea of the states staying like this and the so-called Economic Crime Commission doing everything is wrong. That's one of the things I regretted as a former Attorney General. I did not do it while I was in office. There must be true federalism.
Why didn't you do it?
Were
you hampered by your principal?
No.
Did you think your principal would not be happy with it?
No. My principal was gallant enough to have even suggested it, but maybe time. I didn't stay long, but that's not the issue now. The most important thing is that Lagos State has set a very good example. So, having said that, being chief security officer of the state, what the southern governors did is what they ought to have done. And so they have done it well. Anything talking about not being constitutional and this thing seems to be begging the issue. Take for instance, if you say that open grazing is banning it is against the Constitution, are you now saying that the armed robber that kills and takes his victims' property should be allowed because the Constitution said right to property? Are you saying that? Are you saying because right of movement includes somebody walking into your bedroom and staying because that's right to movement? Are you now saying that freedom of assembly includes the army assembling to overthrow a state? Is that? We cannot look at this law as if there is no limit. Particularly, look at section 45, 1 and 2. What did he say? That these rights of movement as outlined from section 35 to 36 to all that has a limit. There's a limit. So, and you see, the open grazing has been an issue that came far long in the 60s when a judge in Abeokuta made a judgment saying the idea of open grazing in the 60s, the idea of open grazing is against natural justice. There's a judgment of court in Abeokuta which has not been appealed against, which has been there. If open grazing received a knock in the 60s, is it today it will receive blessing? So you see, the state must allow to move up. The southern governors made it right. The willing states should be allowed to do
open grazing. Or ranch, so to speak.
Yes.
Let me quickly take this to Lagos now, even though, the question I was asking is whether or not the governors have done what they ought to do within their powers, especially
they did. Yes, they did.
When you look at the question of autonomy for local governments and autonomy for the judiciary, even the state houses of assembly, a lot of them are not particularly autonomous or independent, so to speak. And these are things that are prescribed by the Constitution.
You see, that is why I think I've made a comment somewhere that this issue of the executive order 10 is not necessary. If you look at section 84, 84 has said once the National Assembly passes a budget, the budget for the judiciary moves straight to the first line charge. It's called first line charge from the Consolidated Federation Fund. Consolidated Federation Fund. It moves in there. The same thing happens in section 221 or so of the states. Once the House of Assembly passes the budget of the state, the fund belonging to the judiciary and that of House of Assembly moves straight as first line charge. So failure to obey it is not the same thing as saying the law is not there.
Okay. So let's quickly take this conversation to Lagos now.
Well, there are so many things that you have said to that. We're having our own national conference here just to make sense of them. But, it's very interesting that you drew attention to a judgment in 1960 about open grazing. And it would seem like it's a new phenomenon now, as opposed to the fact that it's something that was a problem as far back as the 60s. And it would look like, one then wonders what the brouhaha is now, knowing that there is a law, there is a precedent. And then I'm wondering what you make, first of all of the cacophony of noises, if I can use the term, on open grazing now. Coming from senior advocates of Nigeria, coming from the highest levels of government at the federal level and the different regions.
I think that some of these misguided views are because we are having much loyalty to nepotism. We're not having loyalty to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria places life, security of life above any other thing. A situation where pregnant woman, nursing mother, old and the children are cut off are killed and cut like grasses, just for the sake of open grazing, I think it falls short of a crime to the Constitution. And those who take away their eyes as if this cutting of Nigeria as grasses doesn't mean anything, I think they have a lot to their conscience. So, bringing up the issue of open grazing, one, is outdated. Nigeria cannot talk about the number of cows they have as the number of cows they have in the United States of America. Over there, do you see cows moving all over the place? It doesn't. There are special places designated for it. Agriculture should not be should not concern the federal government. The states should be able to husband themselves about agriculture. Those who want open ranch should have it there. And all these wonderful cows should be taken over to those places so that you see we have the best of the time. But a situation where citizens are uprooted from their ancestral land and pushed into IDB camps seem to make us look subhumans. And so, proponents of open grazing must appreciate time is changing. The Constitution prefers the people to be alive than being cut like grasses. The Constitution appreciates that ranches can be built, and state government should do that, and not federal government. It's not their destiny. And in the first place, how do you look at the situation? The German has never carried arm to Lake Chad or Jeba in order to fish. The TV man has never carried AK-47 to Sokoto in order to do his farming. The spare parts seller has never carried a gun to anywhere in order to practice his trade. Why would a particular trade be a situation where killing of human beings will be the only way to practice that trade? Any person who supports that idea, any person who takes steps to propagate that idea, either in forms of advice, can only be called what they call vasan.
All right, Mr. May,
segregating.
If I could just jump in and ask you, I mean, there's just so many things that have to be, that were first of all raised in terms of the recommendations by the Southern governors, and then with this ongoing alteration of the 1999 Constitution, where something they want an entirely new document, that this wouldn't suffice. But if I could look at it from that perspective of something you did reference while you were making your previous points about Executive Order 10, which the governors think that the president overreached himself with that. You know, but then could you give us, how should this, for instance, devolution of power, what structure or what format, when it has to do with the judiciary? Because there are those who think, yes, the governors say, look, we don't have a problem with this, we're going to implement this. But the executive order was an attempt to ensure that those things are done. So if you say they overreached themselves, if you say it was out of place to come up with the Executive Order 10, what then is the best way to ensure judicial autonomy without this Executive Order 10?
Excellent. First and foremost, the Executive Order 10 came into place when? Did it solve the problem? Why did this strike now? So let us put it in the proper perspective. The Executive Order 10 is contrary to the spirit of federalism. So the Constitution happened there. What about this problem? Section 14 is there for federal character. Is it being obeyed? Section 217 is there for federal character in appointment of the security apparatus. Is it being obeyed? Section 219 of the Constitution that talks about ensuring that there is a body to make sure that the federal character is reflected in everything that has to do with security apparatus of the country. Is it being obeyed? We must first of all obey our own before asking others to obey their own. That's one. Second one is this. The Constitution is there for the governors to obey. Had it been that the federal government was obeying its own aspects, I think there could be something that will send a ripple. One, I believe that the courts have also a role to play here. When the budget is passed, and the governor has security vote, and keeps it there, and wants to draw on it, and has the executive budget, and wants to draw on it, but does not want to obey the Constitution by passing the money straight to the court, the court should be able to declare that budget a nullity. The court also have a role to play.
Just one
They
moment.
should be able to face the government.
Just a moment, Mr. Ome. There's something you said earlier, and I'm interested in how you think we should go about it. On the one hand, you said Executive Order 10 wasn't necessary because the Constitution was clear. But then, in response to Chamberlain's questions now, you said that there are certain elements, critical elements of the Constitution that is not being obeyed. So the question is, who is supposed to compel the enforcement of the Constitution?
Yes. The Attorney Generals, the Attorney Generals and the civil societies. First,
Oh, Mr.
a
Ome,
situation where the leader sets
Just a
example
moment.
of disobedience to the...
you know that as an Attorney General of the Federation, as a State Attorney General at the time, could you in any way have been able to compel your principal to comply with the Constitution, for instance, in the consideration of the local government administration?
Of course, yes, I did. I did. While Attorney General of the States, I do not want to bring myself into play into this matter now. But then, while Attorney General of my state, there was a time I made a trip, and then there was this strike in my state by the Judicial branch, where they talked about, where the issue of this financial autonomy came up. What did I do? I ran back to the states. I sat down with them. I asked them to draw up an agreement. They did it, and I signed it immediately and said, from today, financial autonomy of the judiciary is in place. I did it as Attorney General. I did it binding the executive because I'm part of the executive. So what happened later and all that may be a different story altogether.
Okay, okay, just one more thing here because we're pressed for time. Now, when you say we lack the political will, both perhaps at the federal and state level, to implement certain provisions of the Constitution and obey them in that respect, what amount of amendment or alteration or new Constitution will ensure that this same question of lack of political will never pops up?
A situation where we just sit down and our leader become feudal lords, this is where we are landing. A situation where we don't ask our leaders to give account of what they're doing. When the breaches in the Section 14 was going on, what did we do? So Nigerians ought to also sit up to ask their leaders to not to be feudal leaders, not to be lords, whom we must prostrate before in order for them to beg them to do what the Constitution asks them to do. A governor that uses the Constitution to be elected, but refuses to obey part of the constitutional provision is worthy of being impeached. Is worthy of the court nullifying the budget because the budget is not obeying the constitutional provision. We thank the Judicial for what the wonderful work they're doing. So we look forward to a better situation, but we cannot continue to sit complacently and expect a better future. There is need for everyone to be concerned and ask the leader. There was this young lady, Yusuf or so, I said sometimes. He said, the presidency is my agent. I am the master. I am the taxpayer. I am the elector. I was wondering, I was just seeing how this young lady was analyzing the situation. A situation where we convert our leaders as masters, who, for anything, we must go cap in hand, kneeling down to beg for our existence. It will make our country a laughingstock.
So how optimistic are you then that this time around we will get it right with the Constitution Amendment?
There is something about Nigerians. In my book, Kedi Mboku, The Sentinel of Justice, I made an analysis. Nigeria has always moved to a precipice. Nigeria has always moved to a precipice. Tipping point. But that gum that makes Nigeria has always come up to save it.
So you believe that this time around, the gum will come up again?
This time around, and in the near future, these changes will come. Because no one can continue to use terrorism, fear, as instrument of governance. A situation where the government sits complacently and terrorists are overtaken. One, you start suspecting, are they instruments for a particular purpose? Because the Constitution said in Section 11, safety of lives is the most paramount duty of the state, of the government. So, a government that fails in it is a government that is attracting questions. Why?
Well, I think that definitely provides all of us food for thought. We hope that the conversation will continue, because we know that, yeah, this is just the hearing for the Senate. We know that of the House of Reps is going to happen sometime in June. Do you think that there will be variations, though? I mean, if we have come out with this much gusto for the Senate, do you think that we'll be coming out with as much gusto in June, when the House of Reps also does its own public hearing?
Okay, maybe the ones forgotten now in the hearing of the Senate may come up that time.
Yeah, don't you think it should just done it together, though?
I believe. In the new
I'm just asking.
In the new constitution that is being proposed.
A new constitution, or is it proposed, or the one
yes,
that's been amended?
Something of that. Oh, you see, this thing is dynamic. The amendments can continue where the amendment fails. Maybe there could be other arrangements to make sure that this polity is stabilized.
Are you seeing something that we're not seeing yet? Are you seeing some? I don't know. I'm just asking you if you're privy to some information we don't know yet.
Okay. The most important thing is, I'm thinking, in line with what you said, some of these things are duplication. But then, there's already a House of Representatives, there's already the Senate. So, they have their duties to do. But I think that some of these things, we can save ourselves some of these hassles, where we can have, you can see what everybody is pointing to. 1963 Constitution. 1963 Constitution is a good market that sells itself. So, if you go to the 1963 Constitution, probably there could be a situation where you have unicameral chamber here.
Okay.
And at that stage, some of these things will not be occurring. And again, there will be a situation where everybody, there's every need for everyone to be eager to belong to Nigeria.
Okay, I think it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Chukwuma Machukwume is a senior advocate of Nigeria and also a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Imo State. Well, that's where we'll leave it for this segment. Sunrise Daily will be back shortly. Please stay with us.